Houthi activates Red Sea corridor trap. EU trade routes severed. Brussels panics. This was never about shipping lanes. It was never about a ragtag militia in sandals launching repurposed missiles at container vessels from the mountains of Yemen. In the opening weeks of the Red Sea crisis, sometime around late 2023, the Western strategic class, those self-congratulating titans of the rules-based order, believed they were watching a containable nuisance, a sideshow, a problem that a few $billion in interceptor missiles and a multinational naval escort could sweep from the headlines within months. But beneath the surface of what looked like random acts of maritime disruption, something far more devastating was taking shape. A strategic trap so precisely engineered, so patiently baited, and so perfectly timed that by the moment Brussels realized what was happening, the jaws had already closed. The Houthis did not disrupt the Red Sea corridor. The Houthis weaponized it. They turned the most critical maritime artery connecting Europe to Asia into a toll road, where the toll is paid in interceptor missiles costing $4 million each, and insurance premiums that have risen over 300% since the crisis began, in rerouted shipping lanes that add 12 to 15 days and hundreds of thousands of dollars to every voyage, and in the slow, grinding economic suffocation of a European economy that depends on that corridor for 30% of its total seaborne trade. How did the poorest country in the Middle East manage to hold the world's richest trading bloc hostage? Why has every military escalation by the West made the situation worse? What specific mechanism turns a $50,000 Houthi drone into a strategic weapon worth billions in economic damage? And who designed this trap? Because it was not designed in Sana'a. Stay with us, because the answers are more devastating than anything you will hear from the analysts in Brussels who are paid to pretend this is under control. If you want raw, uncompromising analysis that goes where the mainstream will not, hit the like button right now, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications. Drop your thoughts in the comments, because this story demands your voice. To understand the trap, you have to understand the corridor. The Bab el-Mandeb Strait, that narrow choke point connecting the Red Sea to the Gulf of Aden, is 26 kilometers wide at its narrowest navigable point. Through this sliver of water, approximately 12% of all global trade passes daily. Container ships, oil tankers, LNG carriers, grain freighters, the circulatory system of the global economy compressed into a channel so narrow that a man standing on the Yemeni shore can see the ships passing with the naked eye. For Europe, the Bab el-Mandeb is not optional. It is existential. Approximately 40% of European trade with Asia transits through the Red Sea and the Suez Canal. The alternative route around the Cape of Good Hope adds approximately 6,000 nautical miles and 12 to 15 days to a standard Asia-Europe voyage, increasing fuel costs by an estimated $300,000 to $500,000 per transit, pushing shipping rates higher, pushing consumer prices higher, pushing insurance premiums into territory that makes some trade routes economically unviable. The Bab el-Mandeb is Europe's economic jugular vein, and the Houthis have placed a knife against it with a steadiness that belies their reputation as an undisciplined militia. The weapons are the key to understanding why this trap works. The Houthi arsenal, supplied and continuously replenished by Iran through logistics corridors running from Iranian ports through the Arabian Sea to the Yemeni coast, includes a layered suite of anti-ship systems designed to create overlapping threat envelopes across the entire southern Red Sea and the Bab el-Mandeb approaches. At the top of the capability stack sits the Tufan anti-ship ballistic missile, a solid-fueled system with a range of approximately 200 kilometers and a maneuvering warhead capable of adjusting its terminal trajectory based on target movement data received from coastal surveillance radars. Below the Tufan sits the Quds family of land attack and anti-ship cruise missiles, subsonic systems with ranges between 200 and 800 kilometers depending on variant, equipped with radar and infrared seekers capable of discriminating between military and commercial targets. Below the cruise missiles sit the Samad family of explosive-laden autonomous drones, delta-wing platforms with ranges exceeding 1,500 kilometers, carrying warheads of between 20 and 50 kilograms, launched in swarms of 10 to 30 units, designed to saturate point defense systems through volume rather than sophistication. And at the bottom of the stack, the cheapest and in many ways the most effective layer, sit the explosive-laden unmanned surface vessels, remote-controlled boats packed with hundreds of kilograms of explosive, guided toward their targets by operators using commercial GPS and encrypted radio links, costing less than $20,000 each and capable of inflicting catastrophic damage on any vessel they reach. The cost mathematics are the mechanism of the trap, and they deserve to be understood with the precision of an accountant auditing a corporate bankruptcy. Each Standard Missile-6 fired from an American Arleigh Burke-class destroyer to intercept an incoming Houthi missile cost between $2.1 and $4.3 million, depending on the variant. Each SM-2 costs approximately $2.5 million. Each RIM-162 Evolved Sea Sparrow missile costs approximately $2 million. Each Phalanx Sea-Whiz engagement, the last-ditch Gatling gun defense, expends between 200 and 620 millimeter tungsten rounds per engagement burst at a cost of approximately $30 per round. Now compare those defensive costs to the offensive weapons being engaged. A Samad drone costs between $15,000 and $40,000. An explosive unmanned surface vessel costs approximately $20,000. Even the more sophisticated Quds cruise missiles cost an estimated $100,000 to $250,000 per unit. The cost exchange ratio across the spectrum runs between 50 to 1 and 200 to 1 in favor of the attacker. Every day the Red Sea crisis continues, the United States Navy is spending more money on defense than the Houthis are spending on offense by a factor that would bankrupt any commercial enterprise and that will, over time, bankrupt the military posture that sustains it. The economic damage to Europe is already measurable and accelerating. Since the crisis began, the Drewry World Container Index, the benchmark for global shipping rates, has spiked by over 200% on Asia-Europe routes. War risk insurance premiums for Red Sea transit have risen by over 300%. Major shipping lines, including Maersk, MSC, Hapag-Lloyd, and CMA CGM, have rerouted the majority of their Asia-Europe services around the Cape of Good Hope, adding an estimated 12 to 15 days to transit times and $600,000 to $800,000 in additional fuel costs per round trip. The European Central Bank estimated in its March 2026 Financial Stability Review that the Red Sea disruption has added approximately 0.4 percentage points to Eurozone inflation, a figure that translates to tens of billions of euros in additional costs borne by European consumers and businesses annually. For an economy already weakened by the energy crisis triggered by the Ukraine war, already struggling with industrial competitiveness against Asian manufacturers, already facing demographic decline and rising social spending obligations, the Red Sea premium is not a minor annoyance. It is the straw on an already buckling camel's back. In Brussels, the reaction has been institutional paralysis, dressed in the language of multilateral consultation. The European Union launched Operation Aspides, a naval mission tasked with protecting commercial shipping in the Red Sea, deploying a handful of frigates and destroyers from France, Italy, Germany, and Greece. The operation has been described by defense analysts as bringing a water pistol to a house fire. The European naval force is too small to provide continuous escort to the volume of shipping that transits the corridor daily, too expensive to sustain at current operational tempo for more than 12 to 18 months without degrading naval readiness in other theaters, and structurally incapable of addressing the root cause of the problem, which is that the Houthis can produce offensive weapons faster and cheaper than Europe can produce the defensive weapons needed to stop them. In Washington, the Pentagon has maintained Operation Prosperity Guardian since January 2024, deploying American destroyers and cruisers on a rotation that has consumed hundreds of millions of dollars in operational costs and drawn down interceptor missile inventories that take months to replenish. The American operation has been more robust than the European one, but equally incapable of resolving the structural asymmetry. You cannot bomb a militia into irrelevance when the militia's patron, Iran, provides continuous resupply through corridors that Western navies have proven unable or unwilling to interdict. In Beijing, the Red Sea trap is being observed with the strategic patience of a power that has already built the infrastructure to exploit it. China's Belt and Road Initiative includes overland rail connections from Chinese manufacturing centers to European markets through Central Asia and Turkey, the so-called Middle Corridor. The more expensive and unreliable the Red Sea route becomes, the more competitive the overland alternative becomes, and the more dependent European trade becomes on infrastructure that China has financed, China has built, and China controls. In Moscow, the Red Sea disruption is valued as a strategic lever that increases European energy costs, weakens European economic resilience, and makes European governments more dependent on diplomatic accommodations with Russia to stabilize at least one of the multiple economic pressures they face simultaneously. In Tehran, the Houthi campaign is the highest return strategic investment in Iran's portfolio. A few $100 million per year in weapons and logistics support, producing tens of billions in economic damage to Western economies and billions in American military expenditure that would otherwise be available for other theaters. In Riyadh, Saudi Arabia has watched the Houthi campaign with the grim resignation of a kingdom that spent 9 years and $200 billion trying to defeat the same force through direct military action and failed comprehensively. In New Delhi, Indian strategists see the Red Sea disruption as a catalyst for accelerating the international north-south transport corridor, a multimodal route connecting India to Russia and Europe through Iran and Central Asia, bypassing the Red Sea entirely. In Ankara, Turkey is positioning itself as the essential transit hub for the Middle Corridor, the overland route from China to Europe that gains value with every day the Red Sea remains contested. In Cairo, Egypt's Suez Canal revenues have dropped by approximately 40% since the crisis began, a revenue collapse that threatens the Egyptian government's fiscal stability and amplifies the social pressures that have made Egypt one of the most fragile major states in the Middle East. First, the Red Sea corridor trap is not a military problem with a military solution. It is a structural asymmetry in the economics of maritime warfare that favors the attacker over the defender by ratios that make sustained defense mathematically unsustainable. Every missile fired, every drone intercepted, every escort mission flown costs the defender orders of magnitude more than the attacker spent creating the threat. This asymmetry cannot be solved by deploying more ships or firing more missiles. It can only be solved by addressing the supply chain that provides the weapons, and that supply chain runs through Iran, a state that no Western power has been willing to confront directly. Second, the economic damage to Europe is compounding, not stabilizing. Higher shipping costs feed inflation, inflation feeds interest rate increases feed economic slowdowns, and economic slowdowns feed political instability across European democracies already under pressure from migration, energy costs, and industrial decline. The Red Sea premium is not a one-time cost. It is a recurring tax on European economic activity that will persist for as long as the corridor remains contested. Third, the primary beneficiaries of the trap are not the Houthis, who are the weapon, but the powers that designed and sustain the weapon. Iran, which gains strategic leverage at minimal cost, and China, which gains competitive advantage for its overland trade infrastructure every day that the maritime alternative remains unreliable. Fourth, The trap reveals a deeper structural truth about the Western naval model. The assumption that expensive surface warships, armed with expensive interceptor missiles, can indefinitely protect global trade corridors against cheap, precision-guided weapons launched from ungovernable territories is an assumption that the Red Sea crisis has systematically and irreversibly disproven. What looked like a shipping disruption was always something else entirely. It was a strategic trap, baited with cheap drones and armed with patient mathematics, designed not to close the Red Sea, but to make using it so expensive that the global economy reroutes around it, empowering the overland alternatives that Western competitors have built and Western navies cannot interdict. The corridor is not severed. It is taxed, and the tax is denominated not in dollars, but in the slow compound erosion of European economic competitiveness, American naval readiness, and the Western assumption that controlling the sea means controlling the world. The old assumption is dying. A new reality is being born in the narrow waters between Yemen and Djibouti, enforced by $50,000 drones against $4 million interceptors. And the mathematics have already decided the winner. What do you think Europe should do? Keep paying the tax? Escalate against Iran? Or accept the rerouting and build alternatives? Drop your honest assessment in the comments. We read every single one. If this analysis opened your eyes, hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications. Until next time, stay sharp.